This article is coming from our buddy Graham. We haven't talked to Graham in a while, but he was on early episodes of the show. Graham Blake, who runs a website called LSAThacks.com. And this is an older article from Graham called How Do I Go Faster on the LSAT? But the candidates that our listener submitted, this is from M, by the way. Thank you, M. First tip says, don't worry about finishing the section. Do what you can with proper form and guess the rest. What's your gut say about that tip?
Yep. Don't worry about finishing. I would say the same thing.
Yeah.
Do well on the ones you get to and guess on the rest.
I'm going to give Graham a pure pearl on this one, because that's like, I don't think I've ever done an LSAT class where I haven't told people to take their time and to focus on accuracy. And one thing, I've never heard anyone say this before. I'm kind of shocked, but Graham says proper form.
Yeah.
What's that make you think of?
Do the question correctly. In other words, don't read the question stem first, read the passage, slow down, understand it. I don't know what Graham means by proper form, but that's what I'm thinking in my mind.
But what's it make you think of in an analogous situation, not the LSAT?
Like working out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like lifting with proper form.
Yep.
Right. I mean, not that
do
I
the
know
reps
shit
right
about it.
Yeah.
But
I feel like
speak to this.
I feel like we've made that analogy before, right? You do the right reps and you do them properly, you're going to get stronger than if you cheat.
Right. So in practice, you should take all the time you can to get them right, because you need to learn how to get them right. That's proper form. But then when you go to the actual day of the test, you don't change your form. You have developed proper form where you can do however many questions you can do. And maybe you get to the point where you can finish the section with proper form. And if you do, you're going to score 178.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you can't do it with proper form, then you shouldn't do it at all. You could hurt yourself if you don't use proper form. The second one that M has excerpted out of this post says, focus on the setup, not the answers. I'll read this. On logical reasoning, spend more time than you think you should on understanding the stimulus. We could say passage instead of the, arcane stimulus.
Sure.
On logic games, spend more time than you think you should memorizing and drawing the rules. On reading comprehension, spend more time than you think you should on understanding the passage. Why, quote, more time than you think you should? Because you're almost certainly overestimating how much time you spend on the setup of the question. Most students do. This is typical. You rush through an LR stimulus in 25 seconds and miss a major concept. Then you waste 70 seconds deciding between answers when you could have gotten through them in 10 seconds if only you had read the stimulus properly. Most students vastly underestimate how much time they waste on the answers. The LSAT rewards you if you understand the stimulus / setup / passage. Yeah, I mean, meanwhile, the answers are designed to be confusing. They subtract information. Spend extra time on the setup and you'll save time on the answers. Then a caveat. Obviously, there are limits to this. You can't spend 9 minutes reading a passage, but you can definitely spend an extra minute. I wish he would have just left out that whole disclaimer. But what do you think about this idea to focus on the setup and not the answers?
I agree with it 100%. I'm confused by two words that he uses here. Memorizing the rules. I don't know that I memorize them, but maybe that's just the same as understanding them and I end up memorizing them. I've just never really.
I think I kind of do. In most cases, they just kind of register for me,
Like you have them in your head.
Well, especially because I don't really even write them out anymore. I mostly solve games with worlds. So it's not like I ever even write out each rule.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm doing is I'm either just taking the rule and baking it into my setup. So, that's good.
So that's not really memorizing them.
No, right? That's obviating the rules by baking them in.
Yeah. What I'm worried about is people reading the rules and turning this into like a flashcard sort of thing where like, okay, have I memorized rule
But
1?
yeah. Okay. Anything else? So the word memorizing, maybe, whatever.
The other thing I was confused about, and not that it even matters to this tip, but I wondered what he meant by the answers subtract information. I don't fully understand that.
Yeah. I'm giving him credit for the truth of the matter, which is wrong answers are wrong.
Yep.
4 out of 5 answers are wrong answers.
Yeah.
They are distracting. They are confusing. They waste your time. The way you go fast on reading comp is you really understand the passage. You've got the main point. You know what the author's trying to sell you. You've got some idea of the argument, not the structure of. I hate when people say they're reading for structure. I think that's a terrible reading comp tip. I'm reading for comprehension. What do you want? Why do you want that? Do you have any evidence for that? Did you give me multiple perspectives? What do you want, though, is the main thing. And if I get that, then I blaze through the questions because I predict the answer to half of them. I mean, half of the questions are just main point questions in disguise anyway. When it says, what does the author think about one little detail? Half of the time, the correct answer is just like, well, this relates to the main point in some way.
Yeah. It has to be consistent with it. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense.
Has to be consistent with the main point. And also, half the time is basically just, did you understand the main point of the passage? Yeah. So, I'm predicting the answers. I'm going through the answer choices very quickly. One of the answers jumps out at me. The other 4 answers look like trash, and I'm on to the next question. And I would bet that half of my time on reading comp is spent on the passage. Probably maybe even more than half my time.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm hardly even reading the words of the wrong answer choices. I'm dismissing wrong answer choices before I get even done reading them. I know they're wrong.
Yeah.
So maybe subtracting information is a little bit of an awkward phrase, but the idea that you should spend more time on the passage in reading comp, in logical reasoning, same thing. Spend more time on the passage, predict the answer 3/4 of the time, probably on logical reasoning.
Yep.
Games, absolutely spend way more time on your setup. I mean, games is maybe where it's the most stark, right? If I do a good setup, there are many games where I bet I literally answer the questions in less than a minute. Right? 4 or 5 minutes on a bitchin' setup. 45 seconds on the questions.
I couldn't agree more, because as I've started to do worlds more and more often, right? At this point, I don't know if I'm doing any more than I did before, but I would say like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, I really started saying, okay, let's look at opportunities for worlds where I hadn't looked before.
Yep.
Right. And I'd be doing the game and I'm like, wow, it's taken me 5 minutes to do this setup. And even though I was convinced that I should try out worlds, I'd been teaching the LSAT for 7 years or whatever. I'm sitting here going, wow, I'm spending a lot of time. Maybe this wasn't the best choice. And then it's like, I go into the questions and it's like, boom, 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 boom. And you're like, oh, the whole thing just took me 6.5 minutes. Okay, that was definitely faster than, say, even 8, which might be, extraordinarily fast in anyone else's book, even in my own. Like, hey, I did this game in 8 minutes. Why would I need worlds? Well, because if you had done it with worlds, you could have done it in 6.5, and had less mental load, maybe, right?
Yep.
So when he says, spend why more time than you think you should, because you're almost certainly overestimating how much time you spend on the setup. This inability to value, I don't know, or estimate how much time you should be spending is way off. If it's off for me after 7 years of doing the LSAT teaching, right? Like it's got to be off for people who just started yesterday.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So this seems useful so far. The third tip is breathe. All right, I'll just read the whole thing. There's a quote here says, I know I should take a minute and refocus, but when the clock is running, I can't force myself to spend time not solving questions. And that's a an anonymous Reddit comment. I guess this is a reader who thinks, or sorry, a commenter on Reddit who has heard that they should breathe or take time or whatever. And then they're like, well, but I can't because the clock is ticking and I can't make myself do it. So Graham says, I hear the quote above a lot. When you're under time pressure, you feel like you just have to keep going and do the questions. This is actually not the attitude of top performers. Across all fields, top performers are acutely aware of mental state. Plowing forward is a bad move. I personally take micro breaks on the LSAT when lifting barbells, when writing, or anything I'm considered good at. The nature of the break depends on the activity. In barbells, I breathe meditatively as I'm lifting and focus within my body if I notice my thoughts stray. When writing, I meditate, do household chores, or look at pictures to take breaks in writing. When doing the LSAT, I just take a breath or two with my eyes closed. Total of 5 to 7 seconds gives me my mind back. How can you afford not to do that? I go fast because I take micro breaks when needed. I do this if I feel stress, panic, etc. And the short break lets me nip those feelings in the bud and get back to work with a fresh mind. That's it for the tip that has been excerpted by M. Again, that's from an article called How Do I Go Faster on the LSAT from LSAT Hacks. What do you think? What do you think about the last bit?
It's not language I've ever used before, but I get what he's saying, and I think it's a good point. I think that, so I've never said like a micro break, but what I think he's trying to describe, or what I think I'm doing that may be similar to what he's describing, is when you're going through a section, there's like breaks between questions, in the sense that I think of each question as a distinct challenge or test, and then I'm going to the next challenge or test. I'm not letting these things blur together, right? I'm not doing one question and then thinking about the last one. Also, between sentences, if I read a sentence and it doesn't make sense, then I'm taking a moment to stop and understand it, clarify in my mind what's going on, and then moving forward. It's like these moments where you're taking time to sometimes break and think about something else, but making sure that you can zero in and be present with whatever it is that you're supposed to do right then and there. Not a sentence ahead, not a sentence behind. What do I understand right here and right now? And if your mind is distracted, then a mini break is a way to bring it back.
Yeah.
And you can take as many of those as you need.
Oh, absolutely. So think about it this way. I'm not saying to do this, but what if you took a full 5 seconds in between every question? Close your eyes, take one really good deep breath, refocus yourself so that you can have a calm, careful approach to the question you're about to do.
Yep.
If you did 5 seconds in between every single question, 5 times, let's say 25 is 125 seconds. You're talking about 2 minutes total out of 35 minutes.
Yep.
If that 2 minutes results in even a 10% increase in your accuracy, or a 10%, let's say it makes you 10% faster at solving the question. Well, then you get 10% times 35 minutes back.
You've just earned a minute and a half.
You actually saved a minute by intentionally wasting 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. And now, please don't take this the wrong. Everybody out there is going to start like taking full 5 seconds in between questions, which is not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is 5 seconds on the LSAT is absolutely nothing. It's an inconsequential amount of time. And if if there's something that you can do in 5 seconds, which close your eyes and take a deep breath, you can do in 5 seconds. Mm-hmm. And if that makes you even fractionally better, it calms you down a little bit.
Yeah.
It lets you let go of that last question and move on to this next question. Takes your panic level down at all. That's the best 5 seconds you possibly could have spent.
Yep.
Overall, I'm voting Pearl.
Yeah, I would give Graham 3 pearls here. 3
Yep.
tips, 3 pearls. Thank you, M, for sending those in.